The moment Grazka's father called her back to the tribal grounds, she knew her peaceful life was ending. She stood in the doorway of the small farmhouse she had come to think of as home, watching the messenger, her younger brother, Throck, shift uncomfortably on the dirt path. Behind her, she could hear Darren moving in the kitchen, the gentle sounds of him preparing their midday meal. The smell of bread baking filled the air, mingling with the scent of the herbs she had planted in the window boxes. 6 months ago, she would have laughed at the idea that such simple domestic pleasures could matter to her. 6 months ago, she had been a warrior, trained since childhood to lead, to fight, to command respect through strength alone. "Father demands your presence," Throck said, his voice tight with something she could not quite name. "The chieftain is dying, Grazka. The succession ceremony must happen before the next full moon." Her hand tightened on the doorframe. She had known this day would come eventually. Her father, Crag Ironjaw, second in command of the Stonefish tribe, had made it clear her entire life that she was destined to lead. She was the strongest warrior of her generation, undefeated in combat trials, respected even by the elder warriors who normally dismissed young orcs as untested. When she had left the tribe 6 months ago, ostensibly to scout the borderlands, it had been with the understanding that she would return when called. She had not planned to fall in love with a human farmer. "Tell him I need time," Grazka said. Throck's yellow eyes widened. "Time? Sister, you do not understand. This is not a request. Father has already announced to the tribe that you will take the crown. The elders have agreed. Everything is prepared. You must come now, today." "I said I need time," she repeated, her voice harder now, the warrior's edge creeping back in. Her brother stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What is wrong with you? This is everything we trained for, everything our family has worked toward for generations. You were supposed to be scouting, gathering information about human settlements for when we expand our territory. Instead, I find you here living in this." He gestured at the farmhouse with barely concealed disgust. "With a human. What are you doing, Grazka?" Before she could answer, Darren appeared behind her. She felt his presence before she heard him, the way she always did now, as if some part of her had learned to track him without conscious thought. He was wiping his flour-dusted hands on a cloth, his brown hair falling across his forehead the way it did when he had been concentrating on his work. When he saw Throck, he stopped, his blue eyes moving between the two orcs with cautious assessment. "Is everything all right?" Darren asked quietly. Throck stared at him, and Grazka saw her brother truly take in the scene for the first time. Saw him notice her worn dress, so different from her warrior's gear. Saw him notice the domestic tableau they had created, the small touches that marked this as a shared home rather than a temporary shelter. The two mugs on the table, positioned across from each other. The larger chair Darren had built to accommodate her size. The garden she had planted with vegetables from both orcish and human traditions growing side by side. "You are living with him," Throck said slowly, disbelief dripping from every word. As his woman." Grazka lifted her chin. "I am living with him, yes." "Have you lost your mind?" Her brother's voice rose. "Do you have any idea what this will do to our family's honor? You, the chosen heir to the Stonefish tribe, bedding down with a human like some outcast with no clan loyalty." "Careful," Grazka said softly, but there was steel beneath the word. Darren touched her shoulder lightly. "Maybe we should talk about this inside." "No." Throck backed away as if the very threshold of the house might contaminate him. "No, I will not enter this place. Grazka, you have 3 days. 3 days to come to your senses and return to the tribe. After that, Father says he will come here himself, and you know he will not be as patient as I am being." He turned and stalked away, his broad shoulders rigid with anger and confusion. Grazka watched him go, watched him mount the large war trained boar that orcs of their tribe favored and disappear down the road that led north toward the tribal lands. When he was gone, she sagged slightly against the doorframe. Darren's hand remained on her shoulder, warm and steady. "You knew this was coming," he said gently. "Knowing and facing are different things," she replied. They went inside and she sank into the chair he had made for her, the one that had become hers over these past months. Darren brought her a cup of water, then sat across from her at the table, waiting. It was one of the things she loved about him, that patience. He never pushed, never demanded answers before she was ready to give them. It was so different from the way she had been raised, where strength meant asserting dominance in every interaction, where silence was weakness and patience was hesitation. "Tell me about the crown," he said after a while. "Tell me what it means." Grazka drank deeply, gathering her thoughts. In orc culture, leadership is earned through strength, yes, but also through lineage. My father is the most respected warrior in our tribe after the chieftain. He has led our warband to victory in countless battles. His father before him was chieftain, but he died before my father could succeed him, and the crown went to a rival family. My father has spent his entire life ensuring that I would reclaim what he believes is our family's rightful place. "And you trained for this your whole life," Darren said. "Every day since I could walk. Combat, strategy, leadership, tribal law, the history of our people. I was never just Grazka. I was Grazka Ironjaw, future chieftain, the one who would restore our family's glory." She set down the cup with more force than she intended. "I never questioned it. It was simply what I was meant to be." "What changed?" She looked at him then, really looked at him. Darren Grayson was not what orcs would consider impressive. He was of average height for a human, lean rather than bulky, with the kind of wiry strength that came from years of farm work rather than battle training. His face was kind, marked by sun and wind, his hands calloused from honest labor. There was a scar on his right forearm where a plow blade had caught him years ago, another on his left hand from a cooking accident. He was, by every measure her people used, ordinary, and yet, "You changed everything," she said simply. She remembered the night she had stumbled onto his farm. It had been during a scouting mission, one of the last before she was supposed to return to claim her birthright. She had been tracking a group of human hunters who had been spotted near orcish territory, trying to assess whether they posed a threat. The trail had led her through unfamiliar woods, and she had been caught in a sudden, violent storm. Lightning had struck a tree nearby, and in her haste to get clear, she had fallen, twisting her ankle badly. Pride had kept her moving far longer than wisdom should have allowed. By the time she found shelter this very farmhouse, she had been limping badly, soaked through, her supplies lost in the darkness. She had intended only to take cover in the barn, to rest, until she could continue. She had not expected the farmer to find her there in the morning. Most humans would have reacted with fear or aggression upon finding a 7-foot-tall orc warrior in their barn. Darren had simply looked at her swollen ankle, noted the way she was trying to hide her pain, and said, "That needs tending. Come inside." The memory still had the power to surprise her. She had been so certain he would react the way humans in the stories always did, with violence or terror. Instead, he had offered help. "I thought you were insane," she told him now, a slight smile touching her lips. "I thought you must be suicidal, inviting an orc into your home. I kept waiting for the trap, for the ambush. I spent that entire first day certain that you had gone for reinforcements, that soldiers would arrive at any moment. But I just made you soup," Darren said, matching her smile. "You made me soup," she agreed, "and you splinted my ankle. And you gave me a place by the fire, and when I asked why, you said." She paused, remembering. You said because you are hurt and I can help. What other reason do I need? It had been such a simple statement, but it had shaken something fundamental in her worldview. In orc culture, everything was transactional. Help was given to strengthen alliances, to create debts, to demonstrate power. Kindness for its own sake, especially to a stranger, especially to a potential enemy, was incomprehensible. She had stayed 3 days, until her ankle had healed enough to travel. By the second day, she had stopped watching the road for soldiers. By the third day, she had been helping him with small tasks around the farm, repaying his kindness in the only way she knew how. And when she had been ready to leave, she had found herself hesitating. Stay for supper, he had said. Just one more meal. One more meal had become one more day. One more day had become a week. And somewhere in those weeks, helping with the harvest, learning to cook human food, listening to him talk about his life and his dreams for the farm, she had realized she did not want to leave at all. What will happen if you do not return? Darren asked, pulling her from her memories. Grazka considered the question seriously. The immediate consequences would fall on my father. He has promised the tribe that I will lead. If I refuse, he loses face. The elders who supported him, who agreed to my succession, will see it as a betrayal. Our family's standing in the tribe will be destroyed. And the long-term consequences, someone else will take the crown. Probably Gramak, son of the current chieftain. He is ambitious and cruel. Under his leadership, our tribe will become more aggressive. The raids on human settlements will increase. There will be war eventually. Darren absorbed this soberly. So your choice is not just personal. If you stay with me, people will die. Perhaps, Grazka said, or perhaps I give my people too much credit. Perhaps war is coming regardless and my leadership would only delay it rather than prevent it. She leaned forward, taking his hands in hers. Her hands were so much larger, could so easily hurt him, and yet she held him gently. I know what I am supposed to do, Darren. I know my duty. But these months with you have shown me another way to live. A way that does not revolve around strength and conquest and proving worth through violence. You have shown me that there is value in creation rather than destruction, in partnership rather than domination. I have not shown you anything, Darren said quietly. I have just been myself. Exactly, she said. And that is what changed everything. They sat in silence for a long moment, hands joined across the table. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything in warm gold. In the distance, Grazka could hear the sheep in the pasture, the chickens in their coop, all the small sounds of the farm that had become so familiar. 3 days, Darren finally said. We have 3 days before your father comes. Yes. Then we should not waste them worrying about what comes after. He stood, tugging her gently to her feet. Come, the bread is ready and you promised to help me repair the fence in the north pasture. We have work to do. It was so perfectly, impossibly him, facing the collapse of everything with pragmatic determination and a focus on the immediate task at hand. Grazka found herself laughing despite everything, and she let him lead her outside into the sunlight. They worked through the afternoon, falling into the rhythm they had established over months of living together. Darren measured and planned while Grazka used her superior strength to set the heavy posts. They moved around each other with easy familiarity, and if they spoke less than usual, if there was a shadow of coming trouble over everything, they did not acknowledge it. That night, lying in the bed they shared, Darren held her close. Tell me about the crown itself, he said softly. What does it look like? It is made of iron and bone, Grazka said, forged from the weapons of defeated enemies and the bones of great beasts killed by past chieftains. It is not beautiful by human standards, but it represents everything my people value: strength, victory, the continuation of our traditions. Do you want it? He asked. Not what you are supposed to want, not what your father wants. You, Grazka, do you want to be chieftain? She was quiet for a long time, long enough that she thought he might have fallen asleep. But then she said, I thought I did. For most of my life, I thought that crown was my destiny, my purpose. But now, when I imagine wearing it, imagine sitting in judgment over my people, imagine leading war parties and making decisions that will result in death and destruction, I feel nothing but dread. And when I imagine staying here, living this simple life with you, learning to be something other than a warrior, I feel peace. Is that weakness, do you think, to choose peace? No, Darren said firmly. It is the hardest choice there is. Anyone can choose violence. It takes real strength to choose another path. My father would not agree. Then your father and I see strength differently. She turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight that streamed through the window. If I stay, if I refuse the crown, we will never be safe here. My father will not forgive this. The tribe will not forget. We will always be looking over our shoulders, waiting for retribution. I know, Darren said. You could tell me to go, she pointed out. You could make this easier by saying you do not want this burden, that you did not sign up for a life of hiding and fear. I could, he agreed, but I would be lying. Grazka, I am just a farmer. I have no grand words, no poetry, but these last months have been the happiest of my life. The farm, the work, even the hard days, everything is better with you here. If the price of keeping you is spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, then that is a price I am willing to pay. She kissed him then, pouring into it all the things she did not have words for. The gratitude, the love, the desperate hope that somehow they could make this work. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I do not deserve you, she whispered. Yes, you do, he replied. And I do not deserve you either, so I suppose we are even. The next day passed in a strange, suspended way, as if time itself was holding its breath. They went through their routines, caring for the animals, tending the garden, preparing meals. Grazka found herself memorizing small details, the way Darren hummed while he worked, the precise angle of sunlight through the kitchen window in mid-afternoon, the feel of cool water from the well on a hot day. Part of her was already preparing for loss, cataloging these moments against a future where they might be all she had left. But another part of her, the part that had learned to hope since coming here, refused to accept defeat. There had to be a way forward. There had to be some solution that did not require her to choose between love and duty, between her heart and her people. It was late afternoon when she decided to take a walk alone, needing time to think. Darren understood without her having to explain, simply kissed her temple and told her to be back before dark. She walked into the forest that bordered the farm, following paths she had come to know well over the past months. Her feet carried her to a small clearing she had discovered early in her stay, a place where a stream burbled over smooth stones and wildflowers grew in thick profusion. She had come here often in those first weeks, when she was still trying to reconcile who she had been with who she was becoming. It was peaceful, untouched by human or orc, a neutral space where she could simply be. She sat on a large boulder by the stream and let herself think about her father. Crag Ironjaw was not a cruel orc by the standards of their people. He had never beaten her unnecessarily, had taken pride in her accomplishments, had spent countless hours training her personally when he could have delegated that duty to others. But he had also never asked her what she wanted. It had never occurred to him that she might want something different than the path he had laid out for her. Would he understand if she tried to explain? Could she make him see that strength came in many forms, that there was honor in choosing peace even as she thought it. She knew the answer. Her father's entire identity was wrapped up in warrior culture in the old ways. To him, what she was doing would not be choosing peace. It would be choosing weakness, choosing a human over her own people, choosing shame. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. She was on her feet instantly, warrior reflexes taking over, her hand moving to where her weapon would have been if she still carried one. But the figure that emerged from the trees was not a threat, at least, not an immediate one. Her father stepped into the clearing. Crag Ironjaw was an imposing figure even among orcs. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his shoulders almost as wide as Grazka was tall. His green skin was crisscrossed with scars from a lifetime of battle, and his tusks, larger than hers, were decorated with bands of silver that marked his status. He wore his warrior's gear leather armor reinforced with metal plates, a massive axe strapped to his back. His yellow eyes, so like her own, fixed on her with an expression she could not quite read. "Father," she said, keeping her voice level, "I was not expecting you for another 2 days." "Clearly," he said. "I told Throck to give you time because I hoped you would come to your senses on your own, but I could not wait. I had to see for myself what has happened to my daughter." They stood facing each other across the clearing, the stream babbling between them like the voice of a world that cared nothing for their conflict. "You look different," Crag said after a moment. "Softer. You are wearing a dress. When did you last hold a weapon?" "I have not needed one," Grazka replied. "Not needed." Her father's voice rose. "You are a warrior, the greatest warrior of your generation, and you have been playing house with a human, wearing dresses and doing." He gestured vaguely as if he could not quite bring himself to name the domestic activities that so disgusted him. "Whatever it is humans do in their pathetic little farms. Growing food," Grazka said, "caring for animals, building a life." "That is not life," Crag roared. "That is existence." "That is what the weak do, Grazka, the ones who cannot compete, who cannot rise to greatness. You were meant for more than this." "What if I do not want more than this?" she asked quietly. The question seemed to physically stagger him. He stared at her as if she had spoken in a language he did not understand. "How can you not want more? How can you look at a crown, at the leadership of our people, at everything I have worked to give you, and choose instead to spend your life with a human?" "Because I love him." The words hung in the air between them. She had not meant to say them so baldly, had planned to explain, to build up to it, to make her father understand the complexity of what she felt. But there it was, the simple truth. "Love," Crag said the word like a curse. "You think love matters. You think personal feelings should determine the course of your life, the fate of our people." "Yes," Grazka said. "I do." Her father was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower, more dangerous. "Tell me about him, this human who has unmade everything I built." "His name is Darren Grayson. He is a farmer, a good man. He took me in when I was hurt, showed me kindness when he had no reason to do so. He has never asked me to be anything other than what I am." "What you are is a warrior, a future chieftain. What I was," Grazka corrected. "I am something different now." "You are my daughter," Crag said, and there was pain beneath the anger now. "You are the culmination of everything our family has worked toward for generations. Do you think I trained you out of cruelty? Do you think I pushed you to be the best because I wanted to burden you? I did it because I believed in you, Grazka, because I knew you could be great, because I wanted you to have what I never could, the crown, the respect, the power to shape our people's future." "I know," she said softly. "And I am grateful for that training, Father. It made me strong. But strength is not only about combat. These months have taught me that." "These months have weakened you," Crag countered. "They have filled your head with soft human ideas about peace and love and cooperation. But that is not the world we live in, Grazka. The world is harsh. It respects only strength. If our people appear weak, we will be destroyed. And if we only ever show strength, we will never have anything but war. War is what we are good at. Her father was shouting again. War is what has kept us alive for centuries. You want to change that to make us into something we are not because of one human who was kind to you. He showed me another way to live, Grazka said. A way that does not require constant fighting, constant proving of worth. Is that so terrible? To want peace. Peace is a luxury the strong grant to the weak, Crag said. We are not strong enough yet to afford it. That is why we need you to lead us. Under your leadership, we could become strong enough to demand peace on our terms. But if you abandon us now, if you choose this human over your duty, we will be led by Gramak, and he is not interested in peace. He will lead us to war, and many will die. It was the same argument she had made to herself, and hearing it from her father's lips only made it more painful. So I should sacrifice my happiness for the good of the tribe. Yes, Crag said simply. That is what leaders do. They sacrifice personal desires for the greater good. I thought I taught you that. You taught me many things, Grazka said. But you never taught me that I had any worth beyond my ability to fight and lead. You never asked if I was happy, if I wanted the crown. You simply assumed. Because it is your birthright. No, she said. It is your dream, your ambition, your unfulfilled desire. You are trying to live through me, Father, to claim through me what you lost when your father died. But I am not you. I do not want what you want. Crag was breathing heavily now, his massive hands clenched into fists. For a moment she thought he might attack her, might try to drag her back to the tribe by force. But instead, he seemed to deflate slightly. So it is decided then, he said quietly. You will refuse the crown. You will shame our family, spit on everything I have built, and stay here with your human. I will stay with the man I love, yes, Grazka said. And if that brings shame to our family, I am sorry, but I will not apologize for finding happiness. Her father stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something break in his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was cold, empty of the emotion that had filled it before. Then you are no daughter of mine. From this moment forward, Grazka Ironjaw, you are cast out from the Stonefish tribe. You have no family, no clan, no people. You are nothing. The words hit her like physical blows. She had known they were coming, had prepared herself for this outcome, but hearing them still hurt more than she had expected. Father, I am not your father, Crag interrupted. You have made your choice. Now live with it. He turned to leave, then paused. When Gramak takes the crown, when he leads our warriors south in conquest, when human villages burn and blood soaks the borderlands, remember that you could have prevented it. Remember that your love cost lives. Father, please, but he was already walking away, his broad back disappearing into the trees. She stood frozen in the clearing, listening to his footsteps fade, feeling as if something vital had been ripped from her chest. She did not know how long she stood there. Long enough for the sun to begin its descent toward the horizon, long enough for the shadows to grow long and cool, long enough for the reality of what had just happened to truly sink in. She was clanless, cast out. In Orc society, that was tantamount to being dead. She had no legal standing, no protection, no rights. If any Orc from her tribe encountered her, they would be within their rights to kill her on sight. She was, as her father had said, nothing. And yet, she thought of Darren waiting for her back at the farm. She thought of the life they had built together, small and simple and peaceful. She thought of his smile, his kindness, the way he looked at her as if she were precious rather than powerful. She thought of morning coffee and evening walks and all the tiny moments that had become her new definition of happiness. Was it worth this pain? This loss? Yes, she thought. Yes, it was. She walked back to the farm slowly, composing herself, wiping away the tears that had fallen without her permission. By the time the farmhouse came into view, she had regained her warrior's composure, had locked the grief away to process later. Darren was waiting on the porch, worry clear on his face. When he saw her, he hurried down to meet her. "You were gone so long, I was starting to," he broke off, studying her face. "What happened?" "My father came," she said. "I told him I was staying with you. He disowned me." She said it calmly, matter-of-factly, as if reporting the results of a battle. But Darren knew her well enough now to see past the facade. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I am sorry," he murmured against her hair. "I am so sorry, Grazka." "Do not be," she said, and was surprised to find she meant it. "This was my choice. I knew the price. That does not make it hurt less." "No," she agreed. "It does not." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the fading light. Finally, Darren pulled back enough to look at her face. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now," Grazka managed a small smile. "Now you teach me more about farming. I am staying, Darren, for as long as you will have me. This is my home now. You are my family." Something in his expression shifted, became more intense. "Marry me," he said suddenly. She blinked. "What, marry me?" he repeated. "If you have no family, no tribe, then let me be your family. Let us create our own tribe right here. Marry me, Grazka." Her heart felt too large for her chest. "Darren, you do not have to. I want to," he interrupted. "I have wanted to ask you for weeks, but I did not think it was possible while you still had the crown hanging over you. But now you are free to choose, so choose me, choose us. Marry me." She kissed him, hard and desperate and full of all the emotion she could not put into words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead to his. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." They went inside as full darkness fell, and for the first time since Throck had appeared on the road, Grazka felt something like hope. She had lost her family, her tribe, her birthright, but she had gained something too, a future she chose for herself. A partner who valued her for more than her strength. A chance at happiness that was not defined by duty or tradition or anyone else's expectations. The next morning, Darren went into the nearby village to arrange for a marriage ceremony. Grazka stayed at the farm, not wanting to cause trouble. Human villages near the borderlands were wary of orcs at best, hostile at worst. She had ventured into the village only once, early in her stay, and the fear in people's eyes had been enough to keep her away since then. Darren returned that evening looking troubled. "What is wrong?" Grazka asked. He set down the supplies he had bought, not meeting her eyes. "The village elder refuses to perform the ceremony. He says marriage between human and orc is not recognized, that it would be an abomination." Grazka felt her jaw tighten. "I see." "But," Darren continued quickly, "I spoke to the local priest, Father Marcus. He is older, more open-minded. He said that in the eyes of God all people are equal. He will marry us even if the village does not recognize it. It will not be official by human law, but it will be official enough for us." "Are you certain?" Grazka asked. "This will mark you, Darren. The other humans will know you have married an orc. They may turn on you, refuse to trade with you, make your life difficult." "Let them," Darren said firmly. "I do not need their approval. I need you." 3 days later they stood in the small chapel on the edge of the village. Father Marcus, a kindly old man with more gray than brown in his hair, performed the ceremony. There were no guests, no celebration, no witnesses beyond the priest himself. But as Grazka spoke her vows, promising to stand by Darren's side for the rest of her life, she felt more certain of anything than she ever had standing in a circle of warriors, proving her worth through combat. Darren had made her a ring from twisted iron, simple but sturdy. She had made him one from bone, carved with orcish symbols of loyalty and love. They exchanged them with hands that trembled slightly, sealing a promise that went beyond culture or species. "You are bound now," Father Marcus said, smiling. "In the eyes of God you are one. Go in peace, and may your love be a bridge between your peoples." It was a nice sentiment, Grazka thought as they walked back to the farm hand in hand, but she doubted very much that their love would bridge anything. More likely, it would only deepen the divides that already existed. But that was a problem for another day. Today, she was married. Today, she had a husband and a home and a future that was entirely her own. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Grazka's life. She and Darren fell into their rhythms as a married couple, navigating the small adjustments and compromises that came with truly merging their lives. She learned to cook more complex human dishes. He learned some of the orcish language, struggling gamely with the harsher sounds. They worked the farm together, planned for the future, made love under the stars. It was peaceful. It was simple. It was everything she had not known she wanted. But peace, Grazka was learning, was a fragile thing. The first sign of trouble came on a warm day in late summer. Grazka was in the garden, harvesting vegetables for their evening meal when she heard horses on the road. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw a group of riders approaching the farm. Humans. 6 of them, armed with swords and bows. Soldiers by the look of them, or perhaps mercenaries. Darren appeared from the barn, wiping his hands. He saw the riders and his expression grew wary. "Stay here," he told Grazka quietly. "Let me handle this." But Grazka had not survived her training by being passive. She moved to stand beside him, presenting a united front as the riders came to a stop in front of the farmhouse. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his cheek, looked between them with obvious distaste. "Darren Grayson?" he asked. "That is me," Darren said. "What can I do for you?" "We are from the village council," the man said. "We have received reports that you are harboring an orc, a dangerous orc warrior to be specific." "My wife is not dangerous," Darren said firmly. "She has done nothing wrong." "Your wife." The man said it like it was a particularly filthy curse. "You married this creature." "I married a woman," Darren replied, his voice hardening. "And I will thank you to speak respectfully about her." One of the other riders, younger than the leader, spat on the ground. "Disgusting. Lying with an orc. Have you no shame, Grayson?" Grazka felt her hands curl into fists. Darren must have sensed her tension because he reached out and touched her arm lightly, a calming gesture. "State your business," Darren said coldly. "Why are you here?" "The council has decided that having an orc living so close to the village poses an unacceptable risk," the leader said. "We are here to escort her beyond the border. She has 3 days to leave this territory. If she is found here after that, she will be arrested, or killed if she resists." "This is my land," Darren said. "My farm, bought and paid for. The village has no authority here." "The village has authority over all lands within its borders," the leader countered. "Including yours. The decision has been made, Grayson. Your wife must leave. You may go with her if you wish, though I would advise against it. We have no quarrel with you, but the orc goes one way or another." Grazka stepped forward before Darren could respond. "I will not fight you," she said clearly. "I have no wish for violence, but I will not leave my home either. This is where I belong now." The leader's hand moved to his sword. "Then you will be removed by force." "Try it," Grazka said softly. She was not wearing armor, was not armed, was dressed in the simple work clothes of a farmer's wife. But something in her stance, in the way she held herself, made the soldiers hesitate. They could see she knew what she had been. What she could still be if pushed. For a long moment, the tension hung thick in the air. Then the leader shook his head. 3 days, he repeated. After that, we return with a full contingent, and we will not be so patient." He turned his horse and gestured for the others to follow. They rode away, leaving dust and threat in their wake. Darren let out a long breath once they were gone. "Well, that was not unexpected. What do we do?" Grazka asked. "We figure it out," Darren said. "Together." They spent that evening discussing options. They could fight, but that would only prove the village's point about orcs being dangerous. They could run, find a new place far from both human and orc territories, but that would mean abandoning the farm Darren had spent years building. They could appeal to higher authorities, but Grazka had no legal standing as a clanless orc, and interspecies marriages were not recognized by human law. Every option seemed to lead to loss. "There has to be another way," Darren said, frustrated. "There has to be something we are not seeing." Grazka was about to respond when she heard something outside. A familiar sound, the heavy footsteps of an orc trying to move quietly. She was on her feet instantly, moving to the door. "Grazka, wait," Darren called, but she was already outside. A figure emerged from the shadows near the barn. Throck, her brother, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "What are you doing here?" Grazka demanded. Throck held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I came to warn you. Father has convinced the tribe that you are a traitor. Grommak has taken the crown, and his first act as chieftain is to order your death. There is a war party coming, Grazka. 10 warriors, led by Grommak himself. They will be here in 2 days. Grazka felt her blood run cold. "A war party. For me, Grommak sees you as a threat," Throck explained. "As long as you live, there are some in the tribe who might question his claim to leadership. He cannot afford that. So he has declared you traitor and condemned you to death. I am sorry, sister. I argued against it, but no one would listen." "You should not have come," Grazka said. "If they find out you warned me, you will be punished." "You are my sister," Throck said simply. "I could not let you die without warning. You need to run, Grazka. Take your human and go far from here. Start a new life somewhere the tribe cannot find you." Darren had joined them, listening to the exchange with growing alarm. 10 warriors, he said. "Can we defend against that?" "No," Grazka said flatly. "Even if I were fully armed and armored, 10 trained orc warriors would overwhelm me, and I will not let you be caught in that fight, Darren. You would not survive." "So we run," Darren said. "Your brother is right. We leave tonight, travel light and fast, put as much distance between us and here as possible." "Where?" Grazka asked. "Where can we go that they will not find us? Orcs are excellent trackers, and we cannot go to human settlements. You heard what the village soldiers said. Everywhere we turn, we are seen as threats or abominations. Then we find somewhere in between," Darren said. "Somewhere remote enough that we can make our own way." "That is not a life," Grazka said quietly. "That is just a longer death. Always hiding, always running, never having a real home." "Is that what you want?" "I want you alive," Darren said fiercely. "Everything else is secondary." Throck shifted uncomfortably. "I should go. If I am gone too long, someone will notice. Be careful, sister, and I hope you find peace, whatever you decide." He disappeared back into the darkness, leaving Grazka and Darren alone with their impossible choices. They did not sleep that night. Instead, they talked through scenario after scenario, trying to find a solution that did not end in death or endless flight. As dawn broke, they were no closer to an answer. "There is one possibility," Grazka said as they watched the sun rise. "I could face Grommak, challenge him for the crown." Darren turned to stare at her. "You said you did not want the crown." "I do not," she agreed. "But if I win, if I take leadership of the tribe, I can end this. I can call off the war party, refuse to lead raids on human settlements, try to forge a different path for my people. And if you lose, then I die honorably in combat, and you are no longer tied to a clanless orc. You can resume your life here without the threat I bring." "No," Darren said immediately. "No, Grazka, I did not marry you just to watch you throw your life away in some honor duel. It may be the only way to protect you," she said, "to protect both our peoples. There has to be another option." Name it. He could not. They both knew there was no good answer, no path forward that did not require terrible sacrifice. The day passed in tense preparation. If they were going to run, they needed supplies. If Grazka was going to fight, she needed to recover her warrior's mindset, to shed the farmer's wife she had become, and remember the fighter she had been. She spent the afternoon going through combat forms, her body remembering movements she had not practiced in months. Darren watched, his expression growing more and more pained. That evening, as they sat down to what might be their last meal together, there was a knock at the door. They both froze. It was too early for the orc war party, too late for village soldiers. Cautiously, Darren moved to answer it. Father Marcus stood on their doorstep, looking worried. "May I come in?" he asked. They let him enter, offering him a seat and some water. The old priest accepted both, then looked between them seriously. "I heard about the soldiers," he said. "And I have been asking around, trying to understand what is happening. I believe I may have a solution." "What kind of solution?" Grazka asked warily. "There is a place," Father Marcus said, "far to the west past the borderlands in territory that belongs neither to humans nor orcs. A valley called Sanctuary. It was founded by people like you, those who did not fit in either world. Humans who had been cast out, orcs who had chosen peace, even a few other species. They built a community there, a place where the old hatreds do not matter. Where people are judged by their character rather than their race." "That sounds like a fairy tale," Grazka said. "I thought so too, until I met someone from there," Father Marcus replied. "A young man who had been traveling through, spreading word about Sanctuary to those who might need it. He gave me a map, told me to share it with anyone who was suffering from the divisions between our peoples." He pulled out a worn piece of parchment and laid it on the table. "It is a long journey, at least 3 weeks on foot, but if you could reach it, you would be safe. Both of you." Darren studied the map, tracing the route with his finger. "This goes through some dangerous territory, wild lands, places where bandits and worse are known to hide." "Yes," Father Marcus admitted, "it will not be an easy journey, but it may be your only chance at a real life together." Grazka looked at the map, then at Darren, then back at the map. "Why are you helping us?" she asked the priest. "You do not know me. You have no reason to risk yourself for an orc." Father Marcus smiled gently. "Because I believe that love is sacred, regardless of who it occurs between. And because I am old, and I have seen too much hatred in my life. I would like to believe that there is a place where people can be better than their worst instincts. If Sanctuary exists, if it is real, then perhaps there is hope for all of us." They talked late into the night, studying the map, discussing the route, planning the journey. It would be risky. They would need to move quickly to stay ahead of both the orc war party and any pursuit from the village. They would need to travel light, which meant leaving behind almost everything they had built together. But it was a chance, a real chance at a future. "We leave at dawn," Darren finally decided. "We take only what we can carry, say goodbye to this place, and trust that Sanctuary is real." "And if it is not?" Grazka asked. "Then we keep looking," Darren said. "We keep searching until we find a place where we can be together in peace, however long that takes." Father Marcus blessed them before he left, laying hands on both their heads and speaking words in a language Grazka did not understand, but found comforting nonetheless. When he was gone, she and Darren packed what they could: clothes, food, a few tools, a small amount of money Darren had saved over the years. Everything else, all the small treasures they had accumulated, the life they had built, had to stay behind. Grazka found herself lingering in the doorway of the farmhouse as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. This had been her first real home, the first place where she had felt truly safe and valued. Leaving it hurt more than she had expected. Darren came up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "We will find another home," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "A better one, maybe, one we do not have to hide in." "I hope you are right," she said. They set out as the sun rose, walking west into territory neither of them had ever explored. The first few days of the journey were tense, both of them constantly looking over their shoulders, expecting pursuit. But the land remained quiet, empty of orc war parties or human soldiers. The terrain grew rougher as they left the settled borderlands behind. They walked through deep forests where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy, crossed rivers swollen with late summer rain, climbed hills that seemed to go on forever. At night, they made cold camps, not wanting to risk a fire that might give away their position. It was hard travel, harder than anything Grazka had done in months. But in some ways, it felt good to be moving with purpose again, to be using her body for something other than farm work. And having Darren beside her, facing these challenges together, made it bearable. On the 5th day, they encountered their first serious obstacle. They had been following a game trail through dense forest when they heard voices ahead. Grazka signaled for Darren to stop, and they crouched behind a fallen log, listening. Bandits. At least a dozen of them, based on the voices, camped directly across their path. There was no way around without making a wide detour that would cost them days they could not afford to lose. "We could wait for them to move on," Darren whispered. Grazka shook her head. "Bandits in territory like this do not move on. They have claimed this area. We will have to either fight or negotiate passage." "You are in no condition to fight 12 bandits," Darren pointed out. "You have no armor, no real weapons." It was true. She had a knife for utility, nothing more. "Then we negotiate." They approached the bandit camp openly, hands visible to show they meant no harm. The bandits spotted them immediately, weapons coming up. A tall man with a thick beard and multiple scars stepped forward, clearly the leader. "Well, well," he said, looking them over. "What do we have here? A human and an orc traveling together. Now that is something you do not see every day." "We mean you no harm," Darren said. "We are just passing through. We ask safe passage through your territory." "Safe passage," the leader mused. "That is a thing we could provide, for a price, of course." "We have little money," Grazka said, "but we could offer labor. We are both strong workers. We could help with camp tasks, hunting, whatever you need." The leader's eyes narrowed as he studied Grazka more carefully. "You are a warrior," he said. "I can see it in the way you move, the way you carry yourself. Orc warriors do not travel with humans unless they have been cast out." Grazka said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. "Clanless," the leader said. "Interesting. And you, human, you are either brave or foolish to tie yourself to a clanless orc." "I am his husband," Darren said firmly, "and I would appreciate it if you would answer my request." "Can we pass through your territory?" The leader considered for a moment, then grinned. "Tell you what, my camp could use some entertainment. The orc fights one of my men. If she wins, you pass through freely. If she loses, you pay us everything you are carrying. How does that sound?" It was a trap, Grazka knew. The bandit leader would put forward his strongest fighter, someone who could easily defeat an unarmored, under-equipped opponent, but they had no other options. "I accept," she said before Darren could protest. The bandits formed a rough circle, and the leader called forward his champion. He was a massive human, nearly as large as Grazka herself, with the look of a former soldier or pit fighter. He carried a short sword and a dagger, while Grazka had only her knife. "First blood or submission," the leader announced. "Begin." The big man came at her immediately, confident in his size and armament, but Grazka had been trained by the best warriors of her tribe. She had not spent 6 months on a farm without staying aware of her skills, and her body remembered. She dodged his first strike, using his momentum against him to send him stumbling. He recovered quickly, coming at her again with more caution. They circled each other, trading blows, testing defenses. The man was skilled, no question, but he fought like a human with aggression and brute force. Grazka fought like an orc with strategy and precision. She waited for him to overextend, then struck, her knife flashing out to cut across his sword arm. Not deep enough to cripple, but enough to draw blood and satisfy the terms of the fight. The big man stepped back, surprised. The leader laughed. "Well fought, warrior," he said. "You have earned your passage. Go in peace." They left the bandit camp quickly, not wanting to test the leader's good humor. Once they were well clear, Darren pulled Grazka to a stop. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "But I was not," she replied. "I told you I am still a warrior when I need to be." "I do not want you to have to be a warrior," Darren said. "I want you to be safe." "We cannot always have what we want," Grazka said gently. "But we can keep moving forward. Come. We have lost time." The encounter with the bandits was only the first of many challenges. They faced storms that turned the trails to mud, crossed territories claimed by dangerous beasts, ran low on food, and had to hunt and forage to survive. There were nights when they huddled together against the cold, exhausted and discouraged, wondering if sanctuary was real or just a myth that would lead them to their deaths in the wilderness. But they kept going. They had come too far, given up too much, to turn back now. It was on the 18th day of their journey that they crested a ridge and saw it. A valley below them, green and lush, with a river running through it and buildings dotting the landscape. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from this distance, they could see people moving about, not just humans, not just orcs, but a mixture of both and other species they could not immediately identify. "Sanctuary," Darren breathed. They descended into the valley as the sun began to set, their exhaustion forgotten in their excitement. As they approached the main cluster of buildings, people came out to meet them. A mixed group, humans and orcs standing side by side, along with a few dwarves and what looked like a half-elf. An older orc woman stepped forward, her tusks decorated with simple wooden beads. "Welcome to Sanctuary," she said. "I am Elder Marga. We do not get many new arrivals. What brings you to us?" "We were told this was a place for those who did not fit anywhere else," Grazka said. "I am clanless, cast out by my tribe. He is human, shunned by his village for marrying me. We were hoping you might have a place for us here." Elder Marga's expression softened. "Oh, child, of course we have a place for you. We have a place for everyone who comes here seeking peace." She gestured toward the buildings. "Come. You must be exhausted. Let us get you fed and settled, and tomorrow we can talk about making this your home." They were led to a large communal hall where dinner was being prepared. The smell of cooking food made Grazka's stomach clench with hunger. They had been rationing their supplies carefully for days. But more than the food, it was the atmosphere that struck her. Humans and orcs sat together at long tables, talking and laughing. Children of mixed heritage played in the corners. There was no tension, no division, no hatred. It was everything Father Marcus had promised and more. A young human woman brought them bowls of stew and bread, smiling warmly. "You will love it here," she said. "It took me a while to adjust. I came from a human city where orcs were considered monsters. But Sanctuary taught me that the real monsters are the ones who cannot see past their own prejudices. They ate gratefully, and afterward, Elder Marga showed them to a small cabin on the edge of the settlement. "It is not much," she said, "but it is yours if you want it. We ask all residents to contribute what they can, labor, skills, whatever you have to offer. But there is no judgment here, no expectations beyond basic cooperation and respect." "It is perfect," Darren said, looking around the simple one-room cabin with its fireplace and small bed. Thank you so much." "Thank Father Marcus," Elder Marga said. "He has sent us many lost souls over the years. We are grateful for his faith in what we are building here." She paused at the door. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we will show you around, introduce you to the community, help you find your place among us." When she was gone, Grazka and Darren stood in the center of their new home, hardly able to believe they had made it. They had survived the journey, evaded pursuit, found the promised sanctuary. "We did it," Darren said, pulling her into his arms. "We actually did it." Grazka held him tightly, feeling the exhaustion of the past weeks catching up with her all at once. "We did," she agreed. "We are home." The next days were a whirlwind of introductions and orientations. They met the other residents of Sanctuary, more than 100 people of various species, all with stories similar to their own. Stories of prejudice and exile, of forbidden love and impossible choices. But here, those stories were just background. What mattered was what people contributed to the community, how they treated their neighbors, whether they respected the peace that Sanctuary represented. Darren quickly found his place, his farming knowledge valuable to the community's agricultural efforts. Grazka was more uncertain. At first, her warrior skills seemed less useful in a place dedicated to peace. But she discovered that those same skills translated well to hunting and protection. Sanctuary might be peaceful, but it was not defenseless. They needed people who could track game, defend against wild animals, teach combat skills to those who wanted to learn them for self-defense rather than aggression. She also found herself drawn to the children of Sanctuary, particularly those of mixed heritage who struggled with feeling caught between worlds. She began teaching them, not just combat, but also the philosophy she had learned in her time with Darren. That strength came in many forms. That peace was not weakness, that they could honor both sides of their heritage without having to choose one over the other. Slowly, over weeks that turned into months, Grazka and Darren built a new life. It was different from their life at the farm, more communal, with less privacy but more security. They contributed to the community and in turn received support and acceptance. They made friends, both human and orc, who genuinely cared about them. And for the first time since Grazka had left her tribe, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Winter came to the valley, blanketing everything in snow. Grazka and Darren celebrated their first anniversary in Sanctuary with a small party attended by their new friends. It was a far cry from the elaborate warriors' celebrations she had known in her youth, but it was infinitely more meaningful. "Are you happy?" Darren asked her that night as they lay in bed, listening to the wind howl outside their warm cabin. Grazka considered the question seriously. She had given up her birthright, lost her family, been forced to flee everything she had known. She would never lead her tribe, never prove herself in the traditional ways she had been raised to value. By all the measures she had grown up with, she was a failure. And yet, "I am happy," she said, and meant it. "I am happier than I ever thought possible. No regrets," Darren pressed. "About refusing the crown, none," Grazka said firmly. "That crown would have been a prison. What we have here, what we have built together, this is freedom." Spring arrived, bringing new life to the valley. One morning, as Grazka was returning from a hunting trip, she saw a familiar figure waiting at the edge of sanctuary. Her heart stopped. Throck stood there, looking nervous and out of place. When he saw her, he raised a hand in uncertain greeting. Grazka approached slowly, wary of a trap, but Throck was alone, unarmed except for a traveler's knife. "Brother," she said cautiously, "what are you doing here?" "I had to see for myself," Throck said. "The rumors reached us about a place where humans and orcs live together in peace. I had to know if it was true, if you had really found a home." "It is true," Grazka said. "This is Sanctuary, and yes, I have found a home here." Throck looked past her at the settlement, his expression unreadable. "Father still refuses to speak your name. He considers you dead. But I needed to know you were all right." "I am more than all right," Grazka said. "I am happy, Throck. For the first time in my life I am truly happy. Even without the crown, without the tribe, especially without those things," she said. "I know Father cannot understand it. I know the tribe sees me as a traitor, but I do not need their approval anymore. I have found my own path." Throck was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I am glad. I do not fully understand it either, but I am glad you found peace." He hesitated. "I should go. If I am gone too long, there will be questions." "Wait," Grazka said. "The door is open, Throck. If you ever need it, if you ever want something different than what the tribe offers, Sanctuary is here. You would be welcome." Her brother smiled slightly. "I am not as brave as you, sister. But I will remember." He clasped her shoulder briefly, a gesture of affection that was rare among warrior orcs. "Be well, Grazka. You too, brother." She watched him disappear back into the forest, heading north toward the tribal lands. It was not reconciliation, not really. But it was acknowledgement, and perhaps someday it might be more. Darren found her standing there a few minutes later, staring after her departed brother. "Was that Throck?" Grazka confirmed. "He came to check on me. Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," Grazka said, taking his hand. "Come, we have work to do." The seasons cycled through again. Summer brought new crops and new arrivals to Sanctuary. Autumn brought harvest festivals where human and orc traditions blended into something new and beautiful. Winter brought time for storytelling and craft work by the fire. And through it all, Grazka and Darren built their life together. They expanded their cabin, adding a workshop for Darren and a training area for Grazka. They talked about having children someday, about what kind of world they wanted to create for the next generation. They grew older together, their love deepening with each shared challenge and triumph. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of gold and crimson, Darren said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had taken the crown?" Grazka considered it. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I wonder if I could have changed things, if I could have led my people toward peace instead of war." "Do you think you could have?" "No," she said honestly. "I think the tribe would have rejected any attempt to change so fundamentally. I would have been fighting against centuries of tradition, against the very foundations of orcish warrior culture. I might have accomplished some good, but ultimately I would have failed, and I would have been miserable trying. Whereas now I am teaching a new generation that there is another way," Grazka said. "Not through force or conquest, but through example. The children who grow up here, human and orc and everything in between, they will go out into the world carrying the lessons of Sanctuary. They will be the bridge between our peoples. Not me, not through some crown I never really wanted, them." Darren squeezed her hand. "You are wise, my love." "I had a good teacher," she replied, leaning against his shoulder. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Grazka thought about her father. She wondered if he ever thought of her, if he ever questioned the choices he had made. She would never know, and she found she was all right with that. She had made her peace with being clanless, with being counted as nothing by the standards she had grown up with. Because by the standards that mattered, by the measure of love and happiness and purpose, she had everything. Years passed. Grazka's hair began to show streaks of gray, and Darren's face gained lines that spoke of years spent laughing in the sun. They became respected elders in sanctuary, though they never sought leadership positions. Their wisdom was in their example, in the life they had built together against all odds. And when young people came to them, struggling with their own impossible choices, torn between duty and desire, Grazka would always tell them the same thing. There is no shame in choosing your own happiness. There is no weakness in refusing a crown you never wanted. The greatest strength is knowing yourself well enough to forge your own path, regardless of what others expect of you. Some understood immediately. Others took time to learn, but all of them carried those words forward, spreading them like seeds that might someday grow into a better world. One warm summer day, when Grazka was in her 50th year and Darren in his 48th, they sat together in their garden, surrounded by grandchildren not their own blood, but children of sanctuary who had adopted them as honorary grandparents. The children played while Grazka and Darren watched, content in the simple joy of the moment. "You have any regrets?" one of the older children asked, a young half-orc girl who was struggling with her own identity. "About giving up being a chieftain." Grazka looked at Darren, at the garden they had cultivated together, at the community they had helped build, at the children who would carry forward the dream of peace. She looked at the life she had chosen, with all its challenges and triumphs, its sorrows and joys. "No regrets," she said firmly. "This life, this love, this peace, this is my crown, and I would not trade it for anything." The girl smiled, and Grazka saw understanding dawn in her eyes. Another seed planted, another step toward a better future. As the sun set over sanctuary that evening, casting everything in warm, golden light, Grazka held Darren's hand and felt complete. She had refused a crown, yes. She had been called a shame to her people, had been cast out and declared dead, but she had gained so much more than she had lost. She had gained love, freedom, purpose, and peace. She had gained a family of choice rather than blood. She had gained the chance to show others that there was another way to live, another way to be strong, and in the end, that was worth more than any crown could ever be.